Louisa.
How's everybody doing?
Give me a one if you can hear me loud and clear. Let's cough a little bit. Give me a one in the comments if you can hear me loud and clear. We're just going to wait a little bit for... What's good, Trigger Happy? What's good, Dr. James Ellis? Invite all your friends and family to this one. This is going to be a really, really, really fun show. We're just going to break down the FBA origins of just pearly things from an ideological perspective. For those of you who are familiar with some of my recent shorts, you know that I've been comparing and contrasting pearly with what I call the fecal-brained assimilationist. So I'm just going to break down just some of the history and the trajectory of relationship conversations within the United States and speak about how they helped influence and developed the ideological framework of just pearly things. Just going to wait for a few more people to swing on in, and then we finna get started. What's good? No diplomacy. Give me a one again if you can hear me loud and clear. And feel free to give me a two if you think the music is at an okay level. And by the way, I'm finna open up the call lines if y'all want to come in and give your 2 cents on this. I know this has been a very, very pressing topic within the Black relationship sector, particularly online. So, we're going to have a really, really intriguing conversation because I know a lot of y'all have never even thought about the ways that, the fecal-brained assimilationist and just pearly things could be similar in any stretch of the imagination. We finna expose it. That's good. I see some twos there. And I promise you, this is going to be the best exposition that you've seen about this particular topic, Oh yeah, that's a fact. That's an absolute fact. That's a fact. Yeah, and this is something that we have to deal with because the fecal-brained assimilationists are married to, the American empire, and they don't believe in separating their political trajectory from that of the American empire because they have the foolish "we built this country" statement, which is a lie. We're going to break that down. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started. What's good, Cujo? We got the Zoes in the building. The Zoes. I know we're finna have a really, really powerful conversation when I got the Zoes on deck. So I'm gonna just get started. We're gonna talk about the FBA origins of just pearly things, and believe it or not, they are two sides of the same coin. So we can get into the American origins of modern relationship discourse. So if we're to talk about this, we have to talk about some of the founders. I mean, I'm sure those of you who are college educated are familiar with Edward Bernays, and he's an American social theorist that many reference with respect to propaganda. And then you got W.E.B. Du Bois, and he's considered the father of American sociology. I mean, from Souls of Black Folk to Black Reconstruction. He basically set the framework for the analysis of male and female dynamics within the United States. And then obviously you have E. Franklin Frazier, who stands on that foundation that Du Bois came out of, and he produced the legendary work on the Negro family in the United States. And if you're familiar with Dan Patrick Moynihan, a lot of his analysis was rooted in the blueprint set forth by E. Franklin Frazier and W.E.B. Du Bois. He's a federal official who established a blueprint for the management of Black families in the 1960s. Those of you who are familiar with the Moynihan Report, cultural iconic films like Claudine in the 70s that basically depicted the different strategy that the United States government used to analyze Black families, or to basically what many would classify as the destruction of Black families, right? A lot of that is rooted in the analysis of these earlier scholars, right? So when we're talking about the relationship discourse within the United States, there are key figures who created a lot of different works that we can name to discuss the origin of a lot of these ideological concepts. And these are just a few that I've named here briefly. But as you do more research and as you get deeper into the intellectual roots of a lot of these propositions, you're going to find that in most senses of the word, it's hella Americocentric. So then you have the American roots of modern feminism. If you understand the feminist conversations in most of these relationship spaces within the Anglosphere or the English-speaking world, you're going to see that it is Americocentric. For those of y'all who are familiar with Dr. Tommy Curry's Man Not, you understand that he did a deep analysis of the suffragettes and classical white feminism, in the sense that they were essentially white women who wanted a bigger piece of the pie in terms of the American empire, the colonial empire. And they didn't, Elizabeth Cady Stanton and, the rest of them, they didn't necessarily see Black people in the most positive light, right? So the history of the suffragettes is the history of white feminism. Basically, we're going to get into that. Rights for me, but not for thee. Then you have Gloria Steinem, CIA informant and obvious feminist advocate. She was very, very influential within the development of Black feminists and Black feminism from an ideological standpoint and even from a strategic standpoint. And obviously you have the Combahee River Collective, which is kind of the seminal moment for the development of Black feminism within the United States, and the talking point that the civil rights movement and the feminist movement did not meet the needs of Black women. And that's going to be a really, really, really big point, because you're going to be able to differentiate between feminism in the Western world and the Western construct and feminism abroad, right? In many different countries who are fighting against colonialism. And it helps you understand that for the most part, these conversations are essentially rooted within an American construct. And then obviously you have Angela Davis, Black feminist activist and social theorist associated with the Black Panthers. So most of the male identity politics within the United States have American roots, whether you're talking about anti-feminism, paleo-conservatism, like women should be barefoot and pregnant, or the pickup artists, the men's rights activists, MGTOW, which is men going their own way, passport bros, sex tourism, hypercapitalism is a solution to male problems. Most of these things are rooted within an American conversation. So these are purely American politics if we really, really want to examine them. And then Kimra says, well, for the most part, feminism as an ideology is a Western concept. And I would agree with that. Zoe's in the building. He's going to keep moving. So if you look at some of the major Black relationship content creators, now we're getting into the meat and potatoes of this conversation. Like if you look at on the male side, you have Obsidian. He's an American, an African American. O'Shea Duke Jackson, Black American. B.G.S. Sibmore, Black American. The late Alan Roger Curry, rest in peace, Black American. The late Dave Carroll, Black American. The late Kevin Samuels, Black American. Most of the biggest content creators within the Black manosphere space that Pearl was a beneficiary of are from the United States. Then you have the female side. Real Talk with Yanni. She's a Black American. The Pink Pill, Black American. Divested Zealot, Black American. Lexus Exodus, Black American. Paris Milan, Black American. Cynthia G, Black American. This isn't content that was borrowed from Nigeria, Ethiopia, Somalia. These are Black men and women within the United States, within America, expressing their frustrations towards each other. So people who try to act like, essentially this is a non-American thing, and it was mainly, non-quote unquote fecal brain assimilationist who helped Pearl reach the pinnacle that she is right now. It's just simply not true. The vast majority of these content creators are from the United States when it comes to the Black manosphere and when it comes to divestors, swirlers, etc. So we all understand the slumming growth strategy. This is basically where you use Black people to build a platform for yourself to advance your career. And it comes from the late 19th century, white folks visiting non-white areas to learn how to profit from their culture. Sometimes it would be for charitable purposes, but for the most part, they use this as a way to try to find new ideas and new innovations for their businesses. So this blueprint was used in Black music from jazz to rock and roll, blues, and hip hop, where white capital financed the robbing of Black culture. And essentially, as you know, this is what Pearl used to build her brand on YouTube. And we all can see that very, very clearly. So again, when you're looking at these relationship conversations, you can see that they are purely Americocentric. You hear American accents. And it's funny, I saw a lot of people review, Pearl's interview on Obsidian, and they're basically trying to promote the obvious lie that it was mainly non-fecal brain assimilationist Black people from different countries around the world who were basically defending this white girl. But if you listen to the conversations, you can hear American accents, be they from the West, Midwest, or South. And you also have American political reality, as I was discussing before. The manosphere is typically Republican. You don't see the manosphere promoting the Tories in Britain. You don't see the manosphere promoting Atiku or even talking about Tinubu in Nigeria. Why is it that when the manosphere talks about politics, when divestors talk about politics, they always mention American politicians? Seriously, they always mention American politicians. And the manosphere typically supports Republicans, while Black women generally online promote the Democrats and liberal policies, even if they don't necessarily want to admit it. And even if you look at the cultural constructs that they speak about, when you're talking about baby mama, baby daddy drama, or even viewing immigrants as outsiders, it's crystal clear that these are Americans having this conversation. Black men and Black women from the United States. This is the space that Pearl built her foundation on. So we're going to get into some terminology. This is some terminology that you're going to see me use. So when I generally talk about an African American, this is a U.S. citizen of African descent, and it primarily designates the descendants of enslaved Africans within the United States. Then you have New Africans, which is a descendant of African revolutionaries who resisted racial capitalism in the United States. And this is kind of what a lot of these people online try to act as if they are a part of. They try to act as if they're carrying the legacy of a Delaney, of an Alexander Crummell, of even a guy like Carlos Cooks, right? They try to act as if, they're the son of Malcolm. I've seen a lot of abysmal Dalmatians of Sylvania and fecal-brained Americans try to ride on the backs of the legacy of Malcolm X. But most of them are militant integrationalists, and they wouldn't represent that revolutionary trajectory. So then you have, as I'm stating before, the fecal brain assimilationist. This is a Black person that promotes identity conflicts rooted in diaspora wars and ethnocentric hatred as a means of tethering themselves to the American plantocracy, or basically tethering themselves to the American plantation economy. And that's going to be a common theme that you're going to see among these types. He says, yeah, shout out to the Republic of New Africa too. Yeah, shout out to them. Definitely. A little fast, black on the skin, white in the heart. Yeah, that essentially describes the fecal brain assimilationist, as well as the angry dishwashers of Slovakia. They basically all have the same ideology. So now we're going to get into their duplicitous nature. And right here, I have a chart of the John Tanton network. John Tanton was a late white nationalist who basically wanted a strategy to include non-white people within the anti-immigration movement, because his primary goal was to make the United States as wide as possible. So he created FAIR, the Federation for American Immigration Reform. And from this, there was a variety of Black movements that he established in order to promote his anti-immigrant politics within the United States. You have the Blacks for Equal Rights Coalition, Choose Black America, Black American Leadership Alliance, and then again, Progressives for Immigration Reform. So from the Progressives for Immigration Reform, you get the Angry Dishwashers of Slovakia, as Cujo so intelligently mentioned, as well as the fecal brain assimilationists. And this is key because John Tanton he literally was a far right white nationalist. And he has the same ideology as Nick Fuentes that Pearl brought on her channel, right? And basically endorsed the majority of what he was saying. So if you look at John Tanton and you look at, his roots in the movement, for the reactionary politics, that is inextricably linked to the abysmal Dalmatians of Slovenia and the fecal brain assimilationists. So give me a one if y'all are still with me, and if y'all are enjoying the presentation so far. And I'm gonna go ahead and show my Cash App for those of y'all who want to give me a little bit of support. And I'm finna get a drink of water real quick. Yeah, exactly. Jesse Lee Peterson is a quintessential, militant integrationalist. Yep, he is a quintessential militant integrationalist. So if we go into the duplicative nature of both parties, right? So FBA co-opted ADOS, similar to how Pearl mirrored Kevin Samuels. For those of y'all who were here in 2019, when the ashy Dalmatians of Slovakia first got their start really on social media, and this is especially, they got their boost when Kamala Harris announced her candidacy for the president of the United States. You saw the founder of the fecal brain assimilationists basically using his hashtag with, the Angry Dalmatians of Slovakia's hashtag simultaneously. And over time, he stole the talking points and the ideology from that movement to build his own movement. The fecal brain assimilationist namesake was originally a trademark, basically an online retail store to sell products. So it was capitalist grifting that built the movement over ADOS. And if you examine how Pearl mirrored Kevin Samuels' talking points, in actuality, she was a little bit more honest in the sense of the fact that she paid him to basically give her the juice. So if you look at what they do and how they use reparations as a cover for ethnocentric hatred, similar to how conservatism is used to hide anti-Blackness, you can see a lot of similarities. The whole pull yourself up by the bootstraps, I wasn't a slave back, or I wasn't a slave owner back then, you weren't a slave back then. That type of, monkey wrench into the conversation, those types of non sequiturs, right? Throwing the rock and hide your hand, all that type of stuff, it's the duplicitous nature of both movements, or both bowel movements. So again, you have them blaming Black immigrants for problems in the Black community, which is typical of white wing oriented movements. And it goes back to John Tanton's network, where he's literally trying to promote anti-immigrant and anti-immigration politics within non-white communities. So again, you have the duplicitous nature. He's like, I wish I could comment your presentation because I live in Europe and I feel like you falling prey to your criticism being that you are only seeing the American side of things. No, I'm not Americocentric. It's not that I only see the American side of things. I know that, Britain, France, Germany, Canada, Many of these different nations around the world have similar dynamics. I'm just speaking about the fact that a white American woman who was copying Black spaces primarily copied from Black people within America and not immigrants, as a lot of these idiots online and duplicitous liars are trying to promote. It's just simply not true if you examine the evidence. So again, we're going to get into the duplicitous nature. So FBA and ADOS, they synthesize the Black left-wing critique of America's origins with a right-wing belief in the inherent superiority of those who were born in America. And you can see that here, right? So on one hand, they're angry with the setup of the United States and saying that it's racist and white supremacist. But then in the next hand, they use that identity to prove that they're superior to other Black folk around the world. It's very, very similar. If we look at the roots of conservatism, right? The conservatism that is promoted by Just Pearly things, as well as the fecal brain assimilationists, you can see that on many, many different points, they agree. So we're going to get into the arguments, the central arguments that they use. So they both blame African slave traders for slavery. For Pearl and other white conservatives, continental Africans are the reason that chattel slavery occurred, whereas white folks are the reason that, most Black people and people of African descent are free. They always say that, oh, we stopped slavery. Y'all were the ones who were selling your own people. But if you look at the truth of the matter, that is absolutely not true. The industry of slave trading, the demand was created by wars instigated by Europeans, first in the economic sense and then in the militant sense when they were trying to take over land. In FBA, they play the same game. They blame Africans for slavery as a way of separating themselves from the continent and promoting ethnocentrism. And we're going to get into the contradiction of that within their ideology later on. So again, when we're looking at slavery and the fact that Just Pearly things tries to say that it wasn't that bad, or she insinuated that it wasn't that bad. If you literally look at FBA, they have the same argument in the sense that they say that it refined them and it made them heirs to the American empire, right? A genocide is not something that would do that. If you had a genocide, that would mean that you lost your culture, you lost your folkways, and you lost your mores. A genocide doesn't make you into a more equal citizen of the United States. If anything, reparations is about repairing the original identity that you had that was lost, but they don't even believe in full repair. And we're going to get into that. So they both use pseudo-historical narratives as a form of denial. For those of y'all who are familiar with the Sister Crimson Cure, she did a great breakdown on the fact that, a lot of these white conservatives are using the lost cause narrative, from the sons and daughters of the Confederacy to promote the idea of a benevolent slave owner. And again, when we're talking about genocide, that just doesn't line up. And then the FBA promotes the Negro Origine Pretendian theory about Black Americans being indigenous to America. And this is what makes no sense. How are you going to blame Africans for slavery while claiming to be indigenous to America? If you're an American Aborigine, then slavery obviously has nothing to do with you at all, right? And then again, if you're a Native American, y'all already got reparations. So why are you begging racist white folk for reparation today? Native Americans already got reparations and they got the Bureau of Indian Affairs. So this is where a lot of their arguments and their logic just starts to break down when you really have an accurate analysis of history. So Zane Tank says that people don't understand that these are Africans that were Christianized and Islamicized. They no longer saw themselves as people of the same background. No, that there is some truth to that. There is some absolute truth to that. The Europeans instigated, but in order for America to be a superpower and surpass Europe, then breeding slavery as an internal industry and hence internal colonialism is the essence of America. That's true. That's very, very, very true. But these fecal brain assimilationists don't believe in a anti-colonial analysis. They want a piece of the pie of the American empire in the form of a check. They're not about revolution. They're not about fixing the problem. They're about integrating themselves into a burning building, despite the geopolitical reality that we see within our daily lives, especially seeing the rise of BRICS and the rise of many of the African states in coalition. A lot of these things are changing. And, the fecal brain assimilationists are going to be left in the dustbin of history. So this is a big one. Both sides use scientific racism to justify their hate speech. Phrenology and the analysis of skull morphology between races is quintessential scientific racism. So when you are listening to Nick Fuentes detail what's called Kulturkreis, or cultural area in German, he was basically talking about, he insinuated the differences between Germans and Italians with respect to showing up on time. Germans being more industrious and being more likely to show up on time, and Italians being a little bit less industrious. And that's a reference to a lot of the Moorish or Amazigh ancestry of the Italians, in the sense of North Africans permeating that region, for centuries. So that his conversation about that, about IQ, polychronic cultures versus monochronic cultures, Southern cradle cultures or African cultures, of the equatorial zone would be more so polychronic, following the motion of the sun, the water, the wind, the trees, having multiple time scales. Whereas Europeans, instead of having a concentric conceptualization of time, their time is more linear, and they developed chronological frameworks based upon a linear description of time. This is getting really, really deep into anthropology and cultural differences, but essentially, racist white people, ethnocentrists, have kind of used the scientific racism to basically describe and justify their colonial project within the quote-unquote New World. And then again, the fecal brain assimilationists promote ethnocentric divisions among Black people via hairlines and skull shapes, similar to the scientific racist. So when you look at phrenology, skull morphology, it was like, oh, that ain't no FBA head. That ain't no FBA hairline. And the funniest thing about it is the fact that a lot of these dudes who be commenting about hairlines are over the age of 50. And for those of y'all who know about biology and maturity, you ain't got a full head of hair. You ain't got a full hairline at the age of 50, 55. So it's really silly and immature that we're having these conversations. But when you examine this from a scientific perspective and you look at Nick Fuentes' ideology of scientific racism, when FBA is trying to divide Black people along ethnicities, they're literally using the same arguments, the exact same arguments. And again, both insult majority Black areas. White conservatives see majority Black areas as ghettos not worth living in. FBAs claim that the majority of Black countries are slums not worth living in. And this is a big, big key, because when you hear these fecal brain assimilationist arguments on the internet, they always be like, y'all ain't got internet, y'all ain't got electricity, y'all ain't got healthcare. When if you look at the Black Belt in the United States, right, in Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Arkansas, where the majority of Black folks within the United States live, you have areas without electricity, you have areas without internet, you have areas without dental insurance. So literally, the same ideology that white people promote towards Black people in the United States and towards Black communities as being ghettos, as being slums, as being areas with poor internet connection, areas without electricity 24/7. FBA's using the same arguments against the majority Black countries where their ancestors came from. It's absolutely insane when you really think about it, but it's a fact. They literally have they're from the same origin. They're from the same root. And moving on, these white conservatives claim that the most successful Black people move away from the rest of Black people. So when the Black man gets on, he's finna buy a home, in the suburbs. He's finna get, his kids in the white school, in the suburban white community, with good grocery stores, with paved roads, good lawns, et cetera, et cetera. FBA claimed that Black immigrants leave their countries and refuse to build them. This is absolutely ridiculous, in the sense that, most of these immigrants who leave their nations, they actually go back every single year, right? And, if you were to look at foreign aid versus remittances, what people are sending back home, right? That the remittances that African immigrants abroad send back home are much more than foreign aid, billions and billions of dollars more than foreign aid. So if you take that conversation back to the United States, you see that a lot of Black folks who may leave the South, they may leave urban areas and move to the suburbs. They do participate in organizations like charities and different church community gatherings, and just different ways that they could invest in their families and in their communities as they're living a safer life, a more productive life in many ways, economically, within whatever suburban or non-Black community that they live in. And Kemra, if you can't see the ideological similarities, I'm going to open up the call lines. If you can't see the ideological similarities between FBAs and Just Pearly Things, in the sense that Just Pearly Things literally is from America, promotes Americocentric talking points, and there's just so many different commonalities between the white conservative ideology or the conservative ideology in general and these fecal-brain assimilationists who want to tether themselves to the American empire. Like, honestly, I don't really know what to say, to be honest. And I'm almost done, but again, you have rights for me, but not for thee. So you have white conservatives, and they promote the U.S. Constitution, but don't support its usage against the status quo. So if you look at the many movements against critical race theory or teaching Black people about the truth of United States history within the schools, a lot of these white conservatives are against that, despite the existence of the First Amendment. And even if you look at the Second Amendment or the right to bear arms, a lot of white folks feel very, very uncomfortable with Black people exercising their rights to bear arms. And the similarity with the fecal brain assimilationists is the fact that they promote an American identity while wanting to police the language of Black immigrants in the United States. So they don't even believe in the First Amendment. They don't even believe in equal rights. They're practicing the same tactics as these white nationalists in essentially trying to gatekeep their position within the American plantocracy. So the rights for me, but not for thee ideology is very similar among them. And they play victim when called out. So, these white conservatives can quickly shift to narratives about straight white males being the most oppressed within the United States. Just Pearly Things literally stated that in her interview with Jesse Lee Peterson, famous Black conservative who is from the United States. He ain't a Nigerian, he ain't an Ethiopian or a Somalian. He is a quote unquote foundational Black to the United States, right? And then you have FBA. They claim to be the most hated people in the world while promoting ethnocentric hatred as the foundation of their ideology. So again, it's always about, it's these internet echo chambers where you see people, and a lot of these people are informants of the government trying to spread diaspora wars and hatred. And then FBA responds to tribalism with tribalism. They respond to hatred with hatred, just like these white conservatives built an entire empire based upon colonialism and genocide while claiming that straight white males are the most oppressed in the society. This is going to be the last slide before we open up the call lines. So you have them stealing the legacy of Black icons like Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, even though they opposed them during their lives. Like, I'm sure that you all have heard the idea that Malcolm X and Dr. King would have been conservatives, or they would have been Republicans if they were alive today. They would have been, on the side of the right wing, right? FBA does the same thing when they try to claim the legacy of Pan-Africanists like Dr. John Henry Clark, Queen Mother Moore, and even Frances Cress Welsing, even though they oppose everything they stood for. It's crazy to me how they can tether themselves to the legacy of Pan-Africanism while claiming to be about Black American nationalism. To me, it's the same type of grifting that you see in a lot of these different right-wing spaces, in the sense that these Black icons are only heroes they're only heroes after they're dead, right? They only become people that you could talk about or on your side after they're no longer here to articulate themselves. So to me, it's the same thing with the fecal brain assimilationists, in the sense that the entire trajectory of Black history and Black development within the United States was all about Pan-African nationalism, from Richard Allen to Edward Blyden and Alexander Crummell to Garvey and Malcolm X, et cetera, et cetera. And the fact that they try to steal the legacy of these people to promote, of these legendary revolutionaries, to promote their modern integrationalist mindset, in my opinion, is hella treacherous. And to me, it just doesn't make any sense. So, I mean, this is a brief presentation. That's all I got as far as, what I wanted to break down. And I'm going to open up the call lines for anybody who wants to come in and chop it up about what I stated, or even if you disagree, feel free to come on. As long as if you're respectful, we can chop it up. So I'm going to drop the link in the chat for anybody who wants to come on in. Click the link in the comments and you'll be good. That's right. Yeah, to me, it's crystal clear. And this presentation was mainly, for me to just delve into, a lot of the roots, the American roots of these conversations. And we got, E. Bizzle in the building. I'm gonna let him come on in so we can chop it up. What's good, E. Bizzle?
Peace. I usually don't catch you live. I've been trying to catch some of your material, but I figure you work like I work, so I'm kind of selective what I watch anyway. And so I think I heard you say that before when you were speaking with Reggie. And I don't blame you. Certain stuff worth arguing over. But what I wanted to bring up, I was just telling somebody about Ron DeSantis and some of the things he was doing in Florida. And my thing is just as an African American or whatever you want to call, how people are. So I had to put a disclaimer out there, whatever they want to call Black Americans or whatever. But overall, I think people, they're not really into history. Now, what he is doing is foul in a lot of ways. Like you said, those opinions are out there. But what is your stance on that as far as what's going on in Florida?
Well, I mean, to me, I connect Ron DeSantis to, a character like Nick Fuentes and even Pearlie, in the sense that the reason why they want to remove Black consciousness from the schools is to make Black people weaker and to make the pig, ripe for the slaughter. And it's the same thing when you're dealing with a lot of these different, alternative identity movements, be they Diabos, various Hebrew Israelites, or people who basically are trying to separate African Americans from the reality of African descendancy, right, as a way of formulating Black culture, right, in Black politics. So to me, it's just par for the course. These are things that we should respect, or these are things that we should expect, and these are things that, when Just Pearlie articulated her opinion about slavery, a lot of these white conservatives who passed that, legislation about or against critical race theory feel the same, that it wasn't that big of a deal, that Black people should essentially stop complaining about it, et cetera, et cetera. So we need to start building our own independent schools. We need to have a more internationalist approach. We need to work with brothers and sisters throughout the diaspora to get accurate historical knowledge. That's a key, because if we are only relying on these public school systems that literally are sanctioned by the adversary, by the open adversary, I mean, we can't expect any more from them. So,
yeah, how's it going, guys?
I'm chilling.
Nice to meet y'all. First time I'm on the panel. Yeah, I don't know about that, man. I think you're dying on the wrong hill with that one, man. I think, if critical race theory is neither a scientific theory, it's I guess an ideology that stems from political scientists from the School of Frankfort. And if you go back to, what am I trying to say? Yeah, if you go back to who is the originator, and that's the funny thing about these theories, is they all come from white people, and the fundamental concepts, you're going to delve into like concepts that are found in philosophers that come from the West, right? So I'm not a big fan of critical race theory for some of these reasons, but like, okay, for example, he's not only banning those books, but he's banning books that show children how to, how use different types of sex kinks. What about, those types of bans? I mean, can we say, well, maybe some of these bans in high schools are legitimate?
I mean, that's kind of goes back to the fact that Black people don't have an independent, political reality. Because when you look at these different things about the right versus the left, conservatives versus Democrats, it speaks to the fact that it's really, really easy for white folks like just Pearly Things and others to literally piggyback off of our identity and our struggles in the same way that the fecal brain assimilationists piggyback off of Pan-Africanists like John Henry Clark and Francis Cress Welsing. These frauds and grifters can piggyback off of us and say, see, you're conservative just like us. We don't agree with, kids using sex toys. We don't agree with that. Now, we do support the Klan and the Sons and Daughters of the Confederacy, but you could just ignore that. We're against these alphabet boys and alphabet girls, so you should support us. It's the same thing. If we don't have an independent reality and we're not organized, it's really, really difficult for us to be able to articulate our own stance within these political realities.
But okay, and I just want to finish with that. Sometimes, the characterization of what you call conservatives is so much entrenched in the his particular history and particular facts. But if you take a step back, conservatism and I guess the opposite side would be progressivism. Which side would you lean on? That would be the question. Like, what, if you have if you take those two camps, and you would probably give a broad definition. Conservatives think that some things that we have in some institutions, some of the things that we've come up with.
Hold on a second. I'm muting Zank for a bit because I think there's some background noise, but I'm going to give you the floor after Cameron is done. Go ahead.
Yeah. So basically, that conservatives some, well, let's say things or institutions or ideas have withstood the test of time, and maybe we should keep them in society because they are beneficial. And progressivism would be well, we maybe want to upgrade or change certain values, certain institutions, because we feel like they are not beneficial to our society anymore. And when you take the arguments maybe from that perspective, for example, a big debate is with what do you call that? Sorry, so my first language is not English. Sometimes I have a hard time getting my words. It's when women don't want to not have babies. What do you call that?
Abortion.
Abortion. Right. That's probably the biggest debate between conservatives and the most interesting one to me, and the one that I have the hardest time to say I lean more on that way or on the other side, because both sides have arguments. So yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that I'm gonna let Zhang Tang chop it up a little bit, but I think that for me it depends, because if you're talking about conservative, what are you conserving? Especially as an African within the United States, what exactly are you conserving? If you're not conserving anything, then what's the point of being conservative? But if you have your own traditional values in your own nation state, it's a different conversation. You wouldn't be in a majority white nation basically trying to conserve something in the midst of sort of a genocidal relationship. But then when you talk about progressive, it basically, the question comes on what standards. Like, are we to progress to where, white women are the primary spokespersons for our message? Or are we to progress to where we can actually have a reality where we can tell our own story? To me, all of those questions are meaningful when we're describing ourselves politically, right? But I'm gonna let Zaytan give his take on, the presentation and just what he thinks about the overall conversation.
Yeah. What's up, bro? What's up with y'all boys? Yeah, I think Tony Burke, you on one, like you right on with these FBA people and Finkel brain assimilation, you call them. But I just feel like, I feel like it's just more division. That's all it is. If you can divide people more and more and more, then it's no fight because you're not one. So I feel like these FBAs and all these different sections we got, as far as in the Black diaspora, it's just more and more division. I see FBAs the same way as I see people that's like Black people that's like attached to their nation. Like people say, "Oh, I'm a Haitian. I'm not an African. I'm a Haitian," or I'm an American. I'm not African. I'm an American, or I'm from France. Nigga that's born in France. So I'm like, bro, you're Black. You're an African. Like, stop the division, because more division is just, it's less fight. You ain't got nobody, you know what I'm saying? Deal with.
Yeah, so I mean, you got a beautiful accent from below the Mason-Dixon line. So, from your perspective, I'm assuming that you live in an area where there may not be as many like immigrants from like Nigeria, Ethiopia, or correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, like, I'm from Dallas, so
nice.
I'm from Dallas,
well,
so like
huge Nigerian community in Dallas. Though.
Absolutely, yeah. I've been there. Yeah. Before. We used to be there.
Yeah, so, no. I was gonna say, like, I stay close to the airport, so like,
yeah.
I'm around a lot of, like, I stay across the street from like Ethiopian family, so nice. Like, I see a lot of stuff in their culture that they do, like, but they Black as hell, but they do a little different, but that's okay, but because that's my family still, you know what I'm saying? And I feel like we are African people. We are very diverse and different, but we still one. So I feel like what you can say.
I want to push back against that idea a little bit, and all within respect, we're all brothers. Like, my skin is on the darker side too, but Africa's the most diverse continent there is on the planet. And at some point, like before the Europeans colonized us, we didn't think all these different kingdoms didn't think as each other as brothers.
I've done a presentation about that, my friend. I gotta immediately stop you. So yeah, it is true that we had different, territorial states, different, principalities. But if you look at pleasantry alliances, particularly within Western Africa, you have what's called the Sanankuya, right? And within different Manjara Labi, within northern Cameroon, Nigeria area, but you always had commercial allegiances across the continent where different nation states would engage within pleasantries or cousinage-based joke alliances to speak about the commonalities between their different traditions and then discuss how they wanted to coordinate certain commercial realities with respects to resources, with respects to defense, with respect to infrastructure, and all types of different trade allegiances. So while what you're saying is absolutely valid in the sense that the diversity of Africa is more than the diversity of any other continent on the planet, the diversity of Africa does not negate the political revolutionary potential of African people. Just because Africa is diverse does not mean that we cannot create a united front against racial imperialism that affects us all.
Well, the thing is, the united front would be a temporary alliance based on a common enemy, but it wouldn't be much more than that. And sometimes you need a little bit more than that to create strong alliances. I mean,
well, sure. I mean, like you're literally dealing with linguistics. You're dealing with cultural substratums, and I don't really want to get that deep into the into the anthropological discussion. But I want to revert back to Zhang, and then we could get Ibizzle's take on this.
Yeah.
So from Dallas, you know, from the D, you know, obviously in Dallas you have a big Cameroonian community, big Nigerian community, Eritrean, Ethiopian community, you know, all of that stuff. So how does the relationship conversation between brothers and sisters, how is it formulated? Do you see the type of discord that you see online, or do you see something different?
No, like the internet in reality is like totally different. Like, I guess some people might hold some things back because like in person, like you could like punch a motherfucker in the mouth for talking crazy. You know what I'm saying? Something they wouldn't say in real life, they'll say on the internet, because on the internet you can't just get right direct to them. But like it's real genuine love out here between, like, you know, all Africans in every place. Like, you know, I got Nigerian brothers, I got Ethiopian family, I got, you know, everybody. I'm cool, you know, I'm cool. I sometimes go out of my way just to acknowledge them. Hey, what's up? How you doing? You know what I'm saying? Just to show them that, like, I don't give a fuck what nobody say. We all one. Like, you know what I'm saying? This melanin is different. Like, our melanin not like a or like, you know what I'm saying? Like, we different. Our hair, all our hair be the same shit. Like, we just different and we one. And I feel like,
let me ask you this on that point. Let me ask you this. So you said before that, you know, the internet and the real world is like polar opposites. There's this claim that's made within this space, you know, by FBAs, people who follow that ideology, that immigrant community is more susceptible to worship white supremacy, you know, more susceptible to take the side of, you know, the police in cases of police brutality, more susceptible to just basically be against African Americans in every sense of the word. What do you think of that idea?
I think it's half and half. I'm not gonna lie. It's like, because I hate to bulk like the family up into one way or the other, but I personally have seen it, you know, one way where, like, you know what I'm saying, a black person will take the side of somebody that's white, or, you know, a police that's white, and, you know, they'll say, okay, no, you wrong or something. I've seen it both ways. I've actually seen, you know, our African brothers and sisters take up for the African Americans over here. So I personally have seen it both ways in different scenarios. That's why I can say, like, it's really based on how you was raised. And, you know, if you was raised with a Afrocentric background, with a, you know, take, you know, a black first mentality, versus a, you know, white first mentality. It really depends on your upbringing. Yeah. That's how I really feel about it, because I have seen it, you know, go both ways.
Yeah, I mean, and you can see it based upon, you know, you have people who are African Americans who may support, you know, conservative Republican anti-black policies, or they may support it comes from the Democrats, when the Democrats want to disregard black people. So it's not necessarily something that has to do with ethnicity. In my opinion, it's more so a class type of conversation.
Exactly.
Conversation. But what about you, Ibizzle? What do you think about it?
You know, thanks for letting me on too. This is a good conversation. Respect to everybody on the panel. But you know, I'm in my 40s now, and I was having a conversation with one of my coworkers, and we talk about a lot of history and everything. And the fact of the matter is, what I see through over the time spent trying to get people to read different things and having some cultural pride, is that we just not gonna have one type of utopia in this world that we live in.
I agree. And I said this before, like personally, I don't think that black unity is possible in the Western world. I think you're always going to have the gender war. You're always going to have the diaspora war. And for me, I wanted to, as someone who grew up in the United States from an American background, I wanted to have the conversation to state that for the most part, when we're talking about swirling and divesting and all this type of stuff, when we're talking about the manosphere, this is largely the intellectual property of black people in the United States, black people in America. So what I didn't want to do was basically blame Pearl on immigrants, quote unquote non-FBAs, because that would serve to delegitimize some of the righteous experiences of black men in America in being frustrated with black women. And the same will go vice versa, because these are the things that we have to sort out as a people. If we're not willing to be honest about the origin points of some of these talking points and propositions, then they're literally impossible to ameliorate. So that was the original purpose behind the entire stream.
You know what, too, and you gave a good breakdown on several different things. I have to go back and look back over some of them. But also going with the history aspect, I mean, you look at right now, you got over 100, I think it's over 100 black museums throughout the United States. Those type of environments, you just are not going to see our people there. Just
Nope.
You know what I'm saying? You're just not going to see any black bookstores.
Yeah.
You're not going to see up here where I'm at in the Chicago area. I could count on one hand, the black bookstore, maybe two, maybe about 6 or 7. And you're talking about the third biggest city in the United States. So people, we live in an entertainment-based society, and I just had to come to the realization of that. It starts at home. You teach your kids. When my kids were little, I taught them. I didn't teach them to hate nobody, but at the same time, I did instill those books of Chancellor Williams, George James, and John Henry Clark. But as you get older, you know that we live in a very diverse country as well.
Yeah.
That you're going to have to be able to interact with different people. That's just how the world is. That's why I always get a kick out of when most black and white, when they travel abroad or to different countries, most of that narrative goes out the window. Once you go abroad and they start pulling out them AK-47, all that other stuff go right out that window.
Oh yeah. I could give an example to that, and I'm gonna let Kimra hop on after this. But when I was last in East Africa, I had conversations with a lot of brothers and sisters, and they kind of had some perceptions. They kind of had like the ideology that black folk in America kind of look down on African people. But at the same time, when I had a conversation with them and I broke some things down to them, they were open. They were really welcoming. They welcomed me into their home, cooked for me, give me some tips about how to navigate around. And I had a really, really good time. So to me, I'm all about, black men and women just being able to expand the boundaries beyond the United States and being able to have these intelligent conversations, because we do have leverage to a degree as people in, the belly of the beast and like the biggest capitalist empire in the world. You wouldn't be able to have, a Kevin Samuels or a Just Pearly Things, or even a Sonnetter, if we to even use him as an example, without being engaged within these contentious conversations about building families, about surviving, about investing, about, how to become a high value man versus a high value woman. Something that people all over the world in a capitalist construct are seeking or trying to climb the mountain and the pinnacle of that, right? The fact that we're here within this space and we're experiencing all of these dynamics in real time, it gives us the opportunity to be able to articulate to different brothers and sisters around the world what to do and what not to do with respect to being around, white folks who have malevolent intentions against us. So what's up, Real Black Media? Coming on in. I'm gonna let Kimra, Dorian, I don't know if you heard the full breadth of the question, but generally what we were talking about, whether or not, you've seen the contentions between different black people in the United States ethnically, whether you've seen certain people more willing to ally with, racism, white supremacist constructs, and just overall, like, what do you think about just the trajectory of black people in America, in relation to other Black people around the world, especially with respect to this recent racial conversation about just pearly things, racism, et cetera, et cetera.
Oh, that's a lot to unpack. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
You can,
let me get Real Black Media before you go in. Let me get Camera, and then you can go in after that.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just going to say when I look at just early things, now I kind of see what you're trying to say. The only thing is, I mean, she's not an ideologue. I don't think she spends any of her time reading papers about like think tanks and trying to.
Would you say that she's a capitalist?
She's definitely a capitalist. She's a product of her environment, right?
That's an ideology, isn't it?
I'm not a capitalist.
I wouldn't define myself as one either, but capitalism, being a capitalist, is literally an ideological position.
So, well, I mean,
money is the ideology, right?
But
right.
She's when I mean ideologue, I mean somebody who thinks theory and applies it to her content, right? Like, okay, Nick Fuentes is clearly an ideologue, right? Somebody who reads theory, who constructs, who tries to build a worldview based on different ideas that he's going to build to stick together.
Well, I think what you're doing right now is you're differentiating a political ideology with an economic ideology, in the sense that Nick Fuentes is like a white nationalist, whereas Pearl, I mean, she for the most part has a capitalist mentality. She's after the dollars. That's what I've seen. I would even use the term grifter, and we have many examples.
If you try to survive in this world, then you are going to be a capitalist no matter what. I mean, who's not?
Well, if you're familiar with my video about Garvey and the development of Garveyism and the anti-capitalist elements of Garveyism, that's not necessarily true. Even though capital formations will be part of any transitional period, upon the organization of Black folks, we don't necessarily have to center profit within our analysis of empowerment.
But if you're on that level, then you become, that's why I'm talking, you become an ideologue, because you're actually trying to think, well, is the system good? Is the system right? Is the system wrong?
Sociopolitically, but economically too.
You know what? I think you can't separate economics from politics. That was one of the greatest, foundations of Marxist theory. He was criticizing the political economy, and he was saying like it's the same subject.
On that point, I 100% agree with you. So would you not state that Pearl's capitalist proclivities influence her political position about slavery and reparations?
I would just say that I don't think I would use her as a reference.
She's a very popular content creator with over 1 million subscribers. I mean, if she can't be a reference.
But do people really come to her to get their political opinions?
In terms of abortion, yeah. In terms of feminism, yeah. In terms of women working versus staying home, yeah. I mean, that's kind of that's the whole point of her channel. So I'm gonna get Real Black Media's take and get him to jump in on this.
Camjiverse, it's good to finally talk to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Good to have you, man.
So, first of all, Pearly, she's a white pimp. I mean, she's a pimp, and she's pimping Black people. There's a brother who used to work with her, who just did a video, very nice takedown. His name is Sarah Garvey. I don't know.
Oh yeah, I'm familiar with him.
Did you see his video?
Yeah, I did. I saw his first video about her ideology and the fact that he tried to teach her about colonialism, and she ignored him.
Right. So it's not like she doesn't know, but the thing is, she was let into the Black Manosphere by one of the founders of Obsidian.
Yeah, I would say maybe more so Kevin.
He announced, here's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
He announced during a broadcast, well, Pearly things, I guess that you just been pulled into the Black Manosphere. I mean, explicitly. He did that. Kevin It's kind of like it was sort of by default. But Obsidian, the black conservative guy, formally, it's not formally, but he announced, oh, well, I guess that just makes you one of us in the black manosphere. But here's the thing. Omowale Africa, I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with his work.
Okay, so this was probably late last summer, early fall. He did a couple of videos about her, when she was blowing up big and her relationship to the manosphere. Well, I called it, I said, this white woman is pimping the black manosphere.
Yeah.
That's exactly what she's doing. She's
Absolutely.
a pimp. So she's pimping the black manosphere, and then the leader, or one of the leaders, accused me of spreading conspiracy theories.
Who?
It was I think it was one. I don't know, one of those.
Yeah.
But anyway, what I said that because it's not a brilliant observation on my part, it's just as a student of history, I see what happens when white people come into the spaces of black people.
Yeah.
Or non-white people anywhere in the world. This is 500 years of history. Mm-hmm. So I was able to spot that right off the bat. They come in to exploit, to plunder. So when, she's making money off of black dysfunction, and the brother Sarah Garvey, he busted it out. He told her business practices with regard to the people, she has this term, she says, my Africans. It's a colonial relationship. They talk about all these black people she got on her payroll. Well, she gives them 10% of ad revenue per show. Brother, Phil, Brother Phil, right?
Yeah.
Uncle Phil?
Yeah.
Uncle Phil explained how exploited, because I don't understand the economics of YouTube, of this YouTube stuff. But Phil said with his 1.5 million followers, he said the way he does it is he gives like certain people, when he brings them on board, he splits the revenue 50-50, plus he gives them a percent of advertising. That's how he does it. What she's doing is just offering a bare percent of advertising.
Yeah.
So so Brother Sarah Garvey was saying, this is ridiculous. What are you talking about? So he broke that down. He also talked about she invited him to a party. He said, we're going to play some games. And he's thinking, well, that's fine. I'll go to her party. I'll play Monopoly. But the board, she said, board game. We're going to play board games. The board game, as it turns out, consisted of, she had a whiteboard in the party space. And she said, when she writes something down on this whiteboard, whoever playing has to do whatever she says, whatever she writes down. If she says, take off your pants, you got to take off your pants. Meanwhile, one of her staff is in the corner of the room filming the whole thing. What is she doing? She's setting them up for exploitation, because you do something goofy on film, you take off your pants, you take off your shirt, you do whatever, they got you on film. This is what he was saying that he saw at that particular party. So there's some real cynicism. We have enough history behind us to not trust these people. They have a track record of exploitation. And that's the bottom line. So I told, when I said she is pimp, that's why I say she's pimping the black manosphere. If you just study for history, black folk knew history, she wouldn't have blown up the way she did. But these guys in the black manosphere, they like, oh shucks, man. Oh, thank you for recognizing that we exist. Cause she's a white woman.
Them niggas deserve to get pimped anyway. They fooled.
This was cringe. This was so cringeworthy.
Well, let me ask you this.
Let me tell you.
Go ahead. Finish up.
One more thing. So now the latest is that she is now putting copyright strikes against the brother's channel for exposing her. Now she's retaliating against him, against Sarah Garvey. But
I saw that.
Go check it out.
I saw that. I saw that.
Yeah. So she's trying to get him. She's trying to get his channel taken down. That's a retaliatory move, and that just goes to show once again, who and what she really is: a white female pimp. Traditionally, the pimping profession has been either white male pimping white women or black women or Asians, or black male pimping mostly black women. But now we have this situation where we got a white female pimp pimping black men.
Well, let me ask you this, because I completely agree with that, with your analysis. But what do you think about the fact that it was mainly black women who gave her such a really, like the black female content creators, who gave her the strongest response, whereas, you know, most of the black male content creators, you know, they kind of were either neutral or they maybe gave her a little bit of some pushback, but they didn't really go in as hard as the sisters did. And to me, like, that shows the political differences between black men and black women within the United States that can't be limited to ethnicity.
Now, when you say response, what kind of response?
In terms of videos breaking her down, you know, exposing her receipts. You know, I'm thinking of the Crimson Cures of the world, the Courtney Michelles of the world, the Danica Maries of the world. You know, they gave much more of a stronger response than you know some of the brothers did. So
hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. And boy, I saw Danica Marie and Six the Goddess the other day. Boy, they were just they were brutal. Courtney Michelle was kinder, but she was, you know, she was on it too. But you know, I think it's just, you know, it gets back to how we as a people are taught to view them. Okay. And it's like I didn't see a representative sample of all the responses. So it's a little hard for me to answer that question. I just appreciate the sisters for stepping up to the plate. Now that whole Black Manosphere thing, I listened to about 8 to 10 hours of their content of the Black Manosphere. And it surprised a lot of people how they bowed down and defended her after this mess, and they're still defending her. It didn't surprise me one bit. It didn't surprise me. Again, it's just a study of history. We got different constituencies within the Black community who respond differently to racism and white supremacy. Some, you know, the Black Manosphere has come off to me as integrationist, accommodationist, anti-Black. You know, the content that I listened to, 90% of it was Black women ain't-ish. Black women, you know, it's just and then this pro-Black stance that they have, man, it's insane.
It seems as if the women, which a lot of these guys in the manosphere say, you know, the women are more pro-Black, in that, you know, pro-Blackness benefits women more than it benefits men.
Yeah, well, you know, see, here's the thing. If you're Black and you're in the Black manosphere, pro means for. So if I'm pro-Black, then that means I'm for you.
Yeah.
So why would you be against me? And I'm for you. What kind of sense does that make? That's internalized white supremacy.
Facts.
You know, I had one of these dudes coming at me. This was a couple of months ago. You pro-Black this and that. I'm like, what kind of crazy BS is this? White folks ain't pro you. You know, they tolerate you until, you know, I mean, I spent a lot of time. I spent most of my life battling white supremacy in one form or another. You know, I mean, online and offline, and more so offline than online. So I know, and I've had Negroes try to sabotage my efforts. You know, I get lots and lots of support from Black folk, but every now and then there's a Negro that thinks that something is wrong with me for going against them. So it didn't surprise me at all. The Black manosphere, none of that surprised me, you know, given what I know about them. And again, it's just my life experiences and a study of history. It just happens. There's always going to be some, you know, it's always easy to find some black folk that's going to defend white supremacy and white supremacists because they see it. They see, well, it's like they're channeling their inner white supremacists. So that's just going to happen. That's just going to happen. You know, those people, you just have to leave them where they are, exactly as they are, and don't trust them.
Yeah.
So, I wanted to actually talk about this FBA.
Let me let God brother break it down a little bit, and then I think Zhang Cheng was going to say something, then I'm going to let you have the floor.
Okay.
So what's up? I called you God brother. What's up, good brother? What did you think of the presentation, and what did you think overall about the conversation?
Well, I mean, my thing is I jumped on late. I was supposed to be here earlier, but I jumped on late. But
sure.
When it comes down to the whole thing about this Pearly chick, I think like just when you look at it, when you see it, just from plain eye view, you could tell that there's a problem here when like the centerpiece to that whole discussion that's mostly about Black interaction, Black socialization, and Black issues is some little redhead pasty ass white chick. Like that shit is weird, and there has to be something going on for that to happen. Like that got to be set up, that got to be structured. You're not going to just pull some white chick in. She really don't got nothing to do with the whole conversation.
Right.
Yeah.
So like the whole point for me is I realized like the manosphere issue is that there's a way that being in oppression influences how you think about your existence, right? Because the bottom line, like the framework, the whole picture is built off the oppressor. So they put things into place to change. Basically, they change how you think about reality. You know what I'm saying? So everything you think about is based off them. And so while Black people trying, like, you know what I'm saying, just the manosphere is Black men, they trying to figure out oppression. They trying to figure out the friction between men and women. They trying to figure out the challenges they have in their life, but they not really able to do, like somebody told me, you got to be able to do a regressive analysis. That's what the dude told me. He was an older dude. And he's like, you got to think about the source of a problem,
right,
to be able to understand how you're going to fix a problem. But you got to be willing to push yourself as far back as you need to get to really see the start of the problem. You know what I'm saying? And that's the issue that we got when you talk about, like, even the brother said he was going to talk about FBA. You got people who doing half-assed thinking about a situation that's really bigger than they even able to, like, they able to accept it is. You know what I'm saying? This manosphere shit ain't got nothing to do with Black women, really. It got to do with Black people and how Black people get taught to behave to each other, how we think about what shit really is and what it's not.
Yep.
All that shit they talking about, like feminism. It's a brother named Tommy Curry did a book, and book break it down. Yeah, that book break it down to you, like you see how this shit is it's like a chess game.
Yeah,
but it's
I mentioned that a little bit earlier on.
Yeah, brother. So like that's really this whole Just Pearly situation. I think it's good that she exposed herself, but people gotta respond to that the right way. Like, you know what I'm saying? And Sarah, for real, you should never be in no position where you sitting next to some white girl talking weird shit about the Black experience and you feel it's your responsibility to educate this bitch and stick next to her. Like, bro,
right,
you can't, like, you don't got no obligations to these people.
Right.
You got none.
Right.
You got none. Like, my nigga, like, once she start doing that, pardon my language, bro, but once she start doing that, you got to get up, pick your shit up, and get the fuck on.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, and that's like where we gotta be now. Like for me, Sarah, he slipped up, and he needs to own that slip up, but he needs to change his actions going forward. And the manosphere, that red pill shit, they gotta start getting smarter, bro. You getting hustled. Same shit with the FBA shit. You getting hustled, bro. Like these white boys is playing you. They playing you hard. So like that's my whole thing. That's me.
Yeah. I was just gonna say this whole conflict with FBA versus Black immigrants in ADOS, that's being orchestrated from behind the scenes by this white group called Progressives for Immigration Reform. It's an anti-immigrant.
Yeah, I mentioned them earlier on in the presentation.
Okay, but anyway, I'm gonna, because I've been following for the last 4 years.
Yeah,
front row seat, but I'll get into that, later on.
For sure. I think Zank, you wanted to get to break something down.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
question when I
Yeah, but I'm gonna Cameron. You can go after Zank.
Hey, yeah, I was going tell y'all. All right, so when I found out, well, it was a little story I got for y'all. So when I found out what a nonprofit organization was, I was shocked, right? So I was thinking like a nonprofit. Oh, okay, so yeah, we're gonna do something. We're gonna go out here. We're gonna do some charity, and we're not gonna make no money off of it. But when my friend explained to me what a nonprofit was, I was kind of shocked. So basically, what he said was, it was, all right. So you make money, but whatever you give, like 90%. If you give 90% of your money away, then that's nonprofit. I say that to say this is this language, this way we talk, in the way is meant to be misunderstood. The way, it's meant to have confusion, meant to have strife in it. So that's why I don't feel like we should participate in none of these different FBA, and it's just division. It's meant to be confused. It's meant for confusion. Like it's not meant for us to fully understand or get to know each other. It's like y'all talking about that little white girl. She's probably a whole government agent. Like I'm not no conspiracy theorist and nothing, but I'm like it's meant for us to be confused. Like it's meant for confusion. Like that's the whole purpose. Like that's all I want to say.
No, I got you. It's facts. To me, whenever somebody is promoting this stuff, with regards to division between different Black populations around the world, we just got to be weary of it. Even when we're talking about the fecal brain assimilationists, to me, I don't know if y'all are familiar with Tahar Kabay, but I mean, the evidence about being an informant is pretty obvious, in my opinion. And it's just sad that, so many brothers and sisters get caught up into that and just wanting to create positive change, but being manipulated by these nonprofits, these NGOs, these institutions from nefarious sources. So it's all a game that we have to, become more familiar with. So, Kimra, feel free.
Well, it's tough, man. I got a lot of stuff I'd like to go and go back to. First of all, the question was what do you guys think is the value or the thing that attracts people to her channel, that gets people to watch her?
She's a white girl, for one, and she's a white girl around Black people, too. And, the anti-feminism being, countercultural to a degree. To me, that's like the peanut butter to the jelly. I mean, it fits everything together. So there's a lot of different things, but I mean, obviously she's funded from behind the scenes too by her parents, who are business owners, multimillionaires, so she's got a lot of resources, but there's a novelty in slumming that I kind of described earlier, and that's going to, go to her advantage.
Well, I feel like there is, I think she's a symptom, or I guess a consequence, is not really a problem. And it's kind of like, it feels like this conversation is discussing the consequence of something and not going to the root of the problem. And that, there, like you talked about feminism in your presentation, but you didn't really break it down into like the different waves. And like right now,
it would be a really, really long time. I didn't want to be here for hours. I just want to leave a brief breakdown.
I guess that's relevant to the conversation, meaning in the sense that like there's this new wave of feminism coupled with gender theory, coupled with critical race theory, that form like an ensemble of like loosely connected ideas that somebody I think it was Kimberly Crenshaw that came up with, like the intersectionality. And I mean, when you go into it and you try to break it down, first of all, it's really hard to, because they're like, it's almost like they invented their own paradigm. That's the first thing. The second thing, so people don't understand them, and people resent what they don't understand. The second thing is they use a lot of the, I guess they weaponize a lot of the subjects in kind of like a cultural war that's taken form, and people don't know which side to choose. And a lot of confused people are just like rejecting the whole thing. And when you see what's happening today, like I was saying earlier, the Ron DeSantis, like you're saying, yeah, well, it's bad that he banned books on critical race theory. But I was like, well, what about the books where, you know, they tell you to put a butt plug in your anus? You know, I think those things are good to ban. So you have this ideology that people commonly refer as woke ideology, and anybody that's trying to make content against that is coming to some type of success. And in the Black community, I guess we tend to lean more towards the woke ideologies, even though I think they're really dangerous, and they don't really, they coming from the same places that the people that created racist theories. I mean, it all comes from the same place. So well, anyways, that's another discussion. But basically what I'm trying to say is that, well, there might be a movement or a part of society, and even within the Black community, that looks at all these new theories that are coming up, that are unable to understand them, and that are frowning upon some of their claims, and they all get lumped onto the same basket. And people, typically, she will be able to use that and to talk about that. And if she's doing it right, then it's easy to make content about that. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of get what you're saying, but I don't completely agree with the formulation behind so-called woke. And you see the term woke used in the manosphere a lot. And, you know, now Rex, again, how do you define woke? Woke, what does it really mean? And
well, I'll tell you what it is. It's gender theory coupled with queer theory, coupled with what was it? Intersectionality, and all that mixed in one basket. And basically, if you go like through the academics, right, you will see that there is like an ensemble of ideas that kind of are emerging, and that emerged into internet culture, and that gave like a lot of different so basically
are you saying that woke is anything that white conservatives don't like?
They happen to that. I don't think that's
to like in a certain way though. That's like Kamji right though, and the reason that he right is because the idea of the term woke is something that Black people use, and actually, right. I think somebody wrote like either an article or a book on it, but the use of the term woke stretches back probably to the 20s or the 30s, and it just literally means to maintain your awareness regarding you, like situational awareness, right? Situational awareness where it's like political, or whether it's social, like, or whether it's physical, being like if you somewhere, if you're from the north, you go to the south, you don't know what the lines are that you're supposed to cross and not supposed to cross. Like that's the whole thing of like woke, like stay woke, be awake. Like I think there was a song that was a lyric in, and then, you know what I'm saying, it became part of the Black people's language. Now what the problem is that we got this shit going on, like, you know what I'm saying, as time goes on, what we do as a collective of people, as you know what I'm saying, as forcibly immigrated Africans, that shit gets co-opted, and then it gets transformed to the use that somebody else wants. So the problem that's happening right now is that you say woke culture, you mean what's actually liberal, you know what I'm saying? It's the liberal think tank. That's what you mean, right? And the reason that you mean that is because
how it emerged within internet culture.
But the thing is that internet culture is weaponized. The internet itself is a fucking Navy military program. You dig what I'm saying? Like
warfare.
We in Twitter and all this shit thinking that Black Twitter exists. Black Twitter don't exist, right? And nobody's gonna give you something like it's the dumbest shit ever. That's why, like I said before, like we gotta think more clearly. It's the dumbest shit ever to think that somebody gonna give you a tool that lets you stretch your voice across the planet and they not gonna monitor that motherfucker. And the person who made it make bombs. Are you like, how dumb is we?
And that's essentially how, what we're talking about, even dealing with the abysmal Dalmatians of Slovakia or the fecal brain Americans. These are essentially digital movements. So without the internet, they wouldn't have existed. So I don't necessarily think, good brother spitting fire. I don't actually think that it is meaningful to speak about wokeness from a conservative perspective, because it's completely dislocated from its origins within, American African vernacular English, especially the historical trajectory of that. But I want to get into Real Black Media's take on this, because, I'm sure you have a lot to say about this, with all of the work that you've been doing in research for the past 4 years. But I want to kind of segue a little bit by directing the question this way. So what exactly do you think about the fact that, in the manosphere, most of these guys, whether you're talking about Bernard Riley, your Edward Andersons, your Obsidians, what do you think about the fact that they're coming at this in defending Pearl from a perspective that was similar to what Kim Ra was speaking about, a sort of Black American conservative perspective? What do you think about that, and how do you think that relates to FBA?
They're doing what the American miseducation system trained them to do: defend white supremacy. When you miseducate people and you put them into a certain situation, the results are predictable. So that's what they're doing. There's nothing in it for them at the end, because and I hate to quote Jason Black, but as he has pointed out frequently, when the system of white supremacy is done using its tools, it breaks them.
And I'd have a question for him on that. Like, what does he think as a adherent and a promoter of American identity for Black people, as the super Blacks, which is what he represents? Like, what does he think is going to happen to him in the very, very end?
Well, you see, one thing about some of these people is that they think it's not going to happen to me. Facts. You know what I'm saying? You always got these people who see themselves as exceptional, but he's already, he got into it as there was a time when I actually took him seriously.
Me as well.
Hung on his every word. And then I saw the shift into the anti-Black immigrant online bashing, the anti-Black immigrant bashing business.
Yeah.
And then he slipped into that, and then he's big up in Tariq. I'm like, oh, okay, so this nigga is just another economic opportunist.
Facts.
But they always think it's not going to happen to me. Just like these guys who move into these white communities, even though there's racial profiling, there's racism, all that stuff, but then they say, well, but I'm a special Negro. I'm special. I'm not like the rest of them Black folks. White people see me the way I see myself, as special and different, and they're gonna leave me. It's the same thing is gonna happen to him. But let me just kind of back up, talk about ADOS, American Descendants of Slavery, and FBA. Now, FBA is Tariq Nasheed's bootleg version of ADOS, right?
Facts.
ADOS itself is a white nationalist front masquerading as a reparations group. ADOS is, I think, I missed the beginning. Okay, there you go. That's it. So let me see. You got progress. Okay, you got it. Okay, I missed that part. But yeah, that's basically, you see the John Tanton Network. This is this white guy. He passed away probably, I think, about a year or two ago, but he was a rabid racist, white supremacist, and an anti-immigrant. One of the big proponents of the white anti-immigrant movement in this country. And so he set up all these front organizations, and you see the deceptive names that white conservatives use, that these white nationalists use. And again, I know white nationalist tactics when I see them, because I've been dealing with these people and doing hand-to-hand combat in various arenas all my life, So they come up with these names like Progressives for Immigration Reform. They're not progressive at all. Yvette Carnell is a co-founder of ADOS. Yvette Carnell is on the board of directors of Progressives for Immigration Reform. You can go on the IRS website right now, look up Progressives for Immigration Reform, and they have her listed as one of their officers. So if you got a black person who's on the board of a white supremacist anti-immigrant think tank, that should tell you the whole story. And if you look at her history, the anti-black immigrant rhetoric started after she joined this anti-immigrant white supremacist group. She is the mother, as you got on the chart. She is literally the mother of FBA. Now, what happened was Tariq Tariq himself is a failed rapper and a failed pimp. And he's basically an imitator. So he saw the traction that Yvette Carnell and her ADOS group was getting. The views and subs were just stacking up pretty high. So then he decided to shift from pretending to be Pan-Africanist. There's a lot of statements that he has made pro-black, pro-Pan-Africanist, and he started shifting over into the anti-black immigrant business. For him, it's just another hustle. Attacking black immigrants is a hustle. And what he did was kept moving in on the ADOS space and started adopting their rhetoric, started big upping ADOS. Yvette Carnell said, "Oh, Tariq is the most wonderful thing since sliced bread. He's given," and next thing you know, Tariq crushed ADOS and took over and just took it over. There was a civil war. I don't know if you saw this in the fall of 2019.
Yep, I was there.
Right. Okay. So Tariq decided to have an FBA conference, and that's when Tone Talks, the other co-founder of ADOS, and Yvette start freaking out. Tone Talks begged them, "Please don't have this conference." Tariq, and so Yvette started getting Yvette, she's a very caustic, abrasive, heavy-handed chick. She wears the pants. Tone Talks is really the female energy of that duo. So then she just basically she started going at Tariq pretty heavy. By then, this war broke out and ADOS had been destroyed. And Tariq took it over. He co-opted every last one of their talking points. He started calling FBA, Foundational Black, we're a lineage. We're for reparations. We have a reparations claim. Our history is all of the rhetoric of ADOS. He adopted, he just parroted all the rhetoric. Black immigrants are the problem, are the source of every problem we have in this, black people having it. Black immigrants are horrible. Oh, these Africans, they fled. Every talking point that ADOS and Yvette Carnell had been promoting, Tariq just took it over. But that's what he does. And he also got stuff from the white nationalist anti-immigrant movement. That's where this tethers term comes from. Well, you're just tethering to our, from our accomplishments in this, just a lot of crazy stuff. So I will never, ever, ever use the term FBA to describe us, people of African descent, descendants of Africans enslaved in the U.S. DAEUS.
Deus, yeah.
Right, Deus. That to me is a better
Yeah.
terminology than,
I mean, I use the term fecal brain assimilationist,
right.
male black Americans. I mean,
Yeah.
I have a variety of
But
creative.
I don't even.
Hey, listen,
I'm
Flex's
gonna use it.
bank account,
Yeah.
King
Fact.
Flex's bank account, finessed, buck broken Americans.
What does it matter if we was enslaved or in here or in Haiti, or if we was in all this shit at the same time? So what does it matter?
Right. Now the see, that's the whole thing. So ADOS, their whole thing was fragmenting. Their job was to fragment, cause disunity between American black people born in America and the rest of the diaspora. And also to foster a mentality of dependence on the system. Yvette did a whole 2.5 hour broadcast where she began deriding and demeaning and mocking and ridiculing what she called do-for-selfers. That is black people who have a mindset of independence. I'm not
Responsibility.
Right. I'm not going to work for this white man. I'm going to, we need to get together and form our own, control our economics.
It's better to beg racists for a check, right?
Right. They were pushing that very heavily in the beginning, and to the point where it caught on with some of her followers, some of her lemmings, because I was going at it back and forth with them about this whole do for self thing. But they were like, well, how can we can't make it without government help. We just can't. That was one of the big, in addition to the anti-black immigrant message, another big piece was to foster dependency. Now, Marcus Garvey and later on Nation of Islam, all those other groups, a whole lot of groups sprung out of that saying we need to get up out from under these white folks economically. But their ADOS's position was, no, we don't. But that's all, you see, this is what I'm saying. This is all orchestrated from behind the scenes by these white folks. And everybody's missing it. You have to understand the origin of the terminology. ADOS, incidentally, was actually stolen. That's a whole nother story from this other group, descendants of American slaves.
Norris Shelton,
right.
Yeah. And they actually stole the concept from Queen Mother Moore, but they just removed the Pan-African nationalism from it.
Right. Yeah. So in Norris Shelton, his people, they mad now. They mad at ADOS. But that we have to understand the nature of this white supremacist beast and how historically they pitted black people. They can always find at least one to stir up the pot. And I think if we keep that in mind, then everything Tariq does, everything these ADOS people, ADOS is just about dead. She's trying to revive it now. She turned it into a 501c4 dark money pit now. And she talked about that now. But we have to understand, whenever, this is just a general rule, if you see black people fighting one another, look behind the scenes. It's almost always somebody white behind it. That's the thing you have to understand. This is history. This is not a brilliant observation on my part. It's history.
Yeah, I want to answer something that, so it's not that we're blaming every problem in the world on black people in America. It's just the fact that if you look at these conversations, especially the conversation that Pearl profited off of, it was the Black American conversation in the Black American space. In my presentation, I broke down just the different ideologues, the major gender warrior, content creators, 99% of them, from the Paris Milans to the Cynthia G to the Pink Bill to Kevin Samuels and David Carroll and Alan Roger Curry and Obsidian. These are Black Americans. That's the idea of this conversation.
Yeah.
And to real Black media's point, again, synthesizing a black leftist critique of America while promoting American exceptionalism.
Mhm. Yeah. The whole thing. See, the whole thing is they use reparations as bait to attract an army of anti-black immigrant black people, or to pitch, to sell the gospel of anti-black immigrantism to black people. They use reparations as bait. These people don't give a damn about reparations. They've been online. ADOS came online, according to Yvette. I have a tweet from her. It came online in December of 2016. And I have worked in a number of organizations, committee work on my job. I know bullshitters when I see them. I know people who talk and don't do a damn thing, but they talk a good game. And that's all I've seen them do. Nothing on the field of reparations, but they came out the gate attacking pro-reparations groups and individuals. This is ADOS. They came out the gate when there was the first congressional subcommittee hearing on reparations was June 19th, 2019. And the people who claimed to be for reparations, they were nowhere to be found. Yvette, Antonio, and Sandy Darity. They were in a church meeting in Alabama while a congressional hearing on reparations was taking place. All three of them didn't need to be at that meeting.
Well, Go ahead.
2 years later, there was a second congressional hearing on reparations. And again, the people who claimed to be about reparations were nowhere to be found. And then they started, if you go to the ADOS101.com website, they took it offline. It's in the Internet Archives, where they mentioned the reparations bill, the only bill that's actually been written and submitted to Congress. They said that we recommend passage of HR 40 in its entirety, right? And then they flipped and started attacking HR 40, saying it's trash, this is a horrible bill, it needs to change. And they spent an entire year attacking HR 40. The more they attacked it, the more congressional sponsorship it got. And then when a Pan-Africanist legislator in California by the name of Shirley Weber, she introduced the California version of HR 40. It was almost word for word the same as HR 40.
AB 3121.
Right, AB 3121, with a few tweaks specific for California. She got it through the legislature. It was signed into law, and all these phony Negroes flipped and took credit for it. Took credit for a bill that they spent a year trashing.
You know, they're attacking that same committee.
We got, and all the sponsorship. So HR 40 has about 200, has over 200 sponsors in the U.S. House of Representatives, and about 20 right now in the Senate. Cory Booker is he's like the one who's leading, he's leading the effort to advance it in the Senate. That was the work of NCOBRA. The reparations group that they have been attacking is the one, because they've been walking the halls of Congress, meeting with Congress people. They've been making phone calls. One of the leaders of NCOBRA, I know him personally, Cam Howard, had 3 meetings with Cory Booker before Cory Booker introduced that bill, before he took it on. That was NCOBRA's work. So they spend, when people come out the gate, this is how you're dealing with rookies and the gang that couldn't shoot straight. If you claim to be about something, reparations, and then you come out the gate attacking pro-reparations groups like NCOBRA, NARC, did a smear piece on Minister Farrakhan. They falsely, now Mr. Farrakhan been talking about reparations for decades, has been pro-reparations for decades. They come out the gate attacking him, accusing him of trying to start a race war. This all coming out of ADOS. Talib Kweli, the rapper, one of his first rap songs was about reparations. This was over 20 years ago. But they come out the gate attacking people who never even heard of them. Dr. Claude Anderson filed a lawsuit for reparations. They started attacking him. So it's not that they're about reparations. They're just trying to fragment the Black world and weaken them and keep us dependent.
Yeah.
I think that's a big thing that you're saying right there. Like what they doing is they containing a threat, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
why they was put into like that's the machine that's behind them, right? It's people being vigilant and they saying, all right, these black people, they a threat because the status quo is threatening us, right?
But-
So if we stop that shit from happening, then shit gonna change in a drastic way. And once you get to the point where black people like they got like autonomy, right? Or they got the ability to control their circumstances more than they got now, then the shit, people's lives on the outside of that, you know what I'm saying? Just straight up white people, it's gonna change in a way that's gonna be way more drastic than they can sort of cope with. So what they doing is they doing a lot of management, and they got a lot of people who cooperating with it for whatever personal reasons they got. You know what I'm saying? So like that's what like that's the part that I saw what you said, like when you was talking about how they came into being and how they get funded and how they change their story and how they disrupt people's shit. Is because this whole shit about the immigrants, the source of power for black people has always been black people collectively. Right. Yeah. So when we link up across borders and shit, it gets worse for them.
It does.
That's how you had nations that got to the point where they put white people in a frame, in a position where they had to publicly make a statement that they were quote unquote liberating them people. They didn't even want to do that shit.
Right.
But because there was so much of a movement, so many people around the world, and it was and like I said, like not like I said, but like for real, when you get to a certain point, certain people can't deny your shit. So like the Panthers had white people that was allies. You know what I'm saying? They had the Weathermen, they had the socialists, they had the student socialist committee or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Because when you get to a certain point and you doing your work and you talking about some real shit, certain people just can't deny your shit no more. And then what happens is that the control over the whole orchestrated shit starts to crumble. You know what I'm saying?
But,
that's what these people working at, brother. Like that's what they doing. They stopping it from happening. And we just falling into the trap thinking that we talking about some smart shit. Like
right. See, people are still treating them as if they're a reparations movement. People are not referring to FBA as a reparations. They ain't. Tariq don't give a flying about doing anything about reparations. He had that little rally in DC last year because his hand was forced by somebody who was actually serious, though misguided, about reparations.
And then he co-opted his march. And I'm gonna let you go. I'm gonna let you go, Kimra. I'm gonna let you go for a second, but I just want to reorient the conversation a little bit because
I wanted to ask something about that point specifically.
Go ahead.
And I think it's important that at one point you talked about like responsibility and black people like having to own up to some of their mistakes. Now, I didn't know all the intricate details that you just laid out. And if I were to believe you, I'd be like, man, this is such an old playbook. Like this has been going on since the 1600s. You can take that through all the way to the African independence.
Yes, you
and
can.
What happened to Kwame Nkrumah, what happened to Thomas Sankara, it can happen because they got basically murdered by other black folks.
Right.
If you remember right?
Yeah.
If you can go all the way to COINTELPRO, and it's like, well, what? Like at one point, if we don't learn the lesson, then we're responsible. Right. At one point, if we don't see that, okay, well, these tactics are going to be used, and we need to create strong institutions that can clearly delineate the messages that we're putting forward. Right. And clearly delineate who are allies and who are not, and bring people to stand under these institutions. And I think that is a fault that we haven't been able to build those. We have like probably a lot of good people doing some good work, right? But it seems that if we take a step back and we look at the broader picture, the situation hasn't changed that much and that's why, I mean, if like you can't look, somebody told me this one time, is you can't blame the wolf for wanting to enter into the the place where there's the sheep. I don't know how it is.
Yeah.
But you can't blame the one who's not standing there and protecting them, or the dog that that failed to stop the wolf, right?
Yeah.
At one point, you have to say, well, okay, well, clearly these are enemies. Clearly these are the tactics they use, and you can't even be mad at them because they've been using them for like 700 years now.
I mean,
and we're falling for them every time.
Yeah. White folks go white. White people go to white, and they're whiting. A wolf is going to wolf. A lion is going to lion.
Yeah, I want to give a special shout out to Some Lion for the 5 on the Cash App. I appreciate it. I'm going to direct this next question to Mr. Rich. So I saw you at the beginning of the presentation. I want to ask you this. When you look at American history, the history of Black folks in the United States, and you look at giants like, Martin Delaney, Richard Allen, Edward Blyden, and just the many different, Carter G. Woodson, my analysis of history has always shown me different icons who are articulating the specific identity of African Americans while, promoting, Pan-Africanist unity. Why do you think, today there's been so many people who, congratulate, this Mink Slide character for giving them their true ethnic identity? And how would you relate that to the amount of Black men who are praising and worshiping Pearl for helping them spread their message?
Man, that's a loaded one right there, bro. Peace to the panel, but it's really mind-boggling. The only thing I can think about is just this pervasive outlook on YouTube, that's reaching the people coming from these characters like Tariq and all these different organizations. It's like what you're saying, and all these giants, they laid the foundation on how we should think, really. It seems that now, with all this YouTube and all these different characters, is like a negative connotation is put on the things that they promoted, Pan-Africanism, pro-Black. I can't, pinpoint where it's coming from, but I know that, like Marcus Garvey said, we should be held, accountable for the state our race is in right now. You know what I mean? But this, it's egregious on on the support they're giving this Pearl. I just looked at it for a second. I haven't even heard of Pearl, but I just looked at a picture of her. I'm like, come on, man. Are you kidding me? I just looked at the picture, bro.
Average at best.
I'm like, man, that's like white trash, man.
With the trashy ideology too.
Come on, man. I'm like, and I just saw one thing that said, she said that slavery is not bad.
Yeah.
It's just like, man, Black, we got to be responsible for this shit, man.
Yeah.
At some point in time, with all this technology, I'm saying after Black Studies came out, with all this technology, you would think that we would be much further.
Yeah. And this is, and Namer, please come up, because this is the ideology that we're talking about. Like if you go back to my presentation, right? Check. When I go to, right, this talking point, you see this talking point about fleeing. And, Pearl and Nick Fuentes, in their conversation that went viral, they were speaking about, Black areas not being livable. And I think Pearl mentioned that again with Jesse Lee Peterson, her conversation with Jesse Lee Peterson, where she said, yeah, Black areas tend to be the ghetto. But if you look at the reality of the fact of remittances, if you talk to immigrants, who they may go back every year, they're sending money to their family, to the political parties and the government to help build infrastructure. It's akin to, Black folks here in the United States who may visit their family in the hood every Christmas or Thanksgiving and may participate in charitable operations to help each other out. A lot of this propaganda, as Mr. Rich is saying, is purely internet based. So again, like if you want to come up and have a conversation, we could have a conversation. But to me, it's pretty clear that, the majority of this stuff is controlled from on high.
But I still think you could make an argument, especially for Africa, saying that the brain flight is deeply hurting Africa. Like, okay, remittances is it's all right, but Africa doesn't need remittances. They need engineers and entrepreneurs
Sure.
and a system that's going to allow engineers and entrepreneurs to like build projects that can lift people out of poverty and create infrastructure that can you know, like provide for the people. So like, I mean, the fact of the matter is, Africa, there's a statistic saying that there's more doctors from Benin in Paris than there is in the whole of Benin.
There's a reason for that, and that's kind of the importance of the African free trade area in contrast to Francophonie and the British Commonwealth, in the sense that it's hundreds of billions of dollars being redirected to a commercial zone that would be dedicated to the development of medicine, of infrastructure, of insurance, you know, the ports. These aren't things like, when you're dealing with hundreds of years of warfare and genocide and colonialism, it's not things that are going to change overnight. But as Real Black Media was stating before, it's all about having an intelligent political engagement on the ground, and you know who's real and who's fake. In 2016, you know, the founder of the Abysmal Dalmatians of Slovakia was against Ta-Nehisi Coates in his article that he wrote in favor of reparations. Now we are led to believe by many individuals online that she's the revolutionary, the chief advocate for reparations. I think the same thing goes with Africa. Yeah, remittances are more than foreign aid. So Africans living abroad send more money back home than all of the countries who are giving aid to Africa combined. But at the same level, locally, within the continental perspective, these different operations of unity and these different operations of macroeconomic synchronization, like the continental free trade area, they're definitely going to go a long way in terms of the long-term development of the continent. So,
2 points, bro, just quick. So I'm sorry, bro, but 2 points I wanted to make. The first point was connected to what I was talking about earlier and what Real Black Media was saying. What we got to do as people, you got to have a healthy distrust of white people, and you got to have an overwhelming love and dedication to blackness and Africanness. That got to be the foundation. From that point, you build everything. The reason being is because when you got that distrust, then you got the ability to look at certain things, even history, with a little bit more of the eye that you need to have, because it's just the reality. You know what I'm saying? That's what gets us. That's what puts Just Pearly next to people, in front of people. That's what put white people talking points in your mouth, is because you don't have enough distrust of what they about and what they do. You know what I'm saying? And you don't have enough of a dedication to quote unquote to Africanness. You know what I'm saying? To realizing that being African ain't a problem just because you in the confines of the United States of America on a North American continent. You dig what I'm saying? And what you're saying about Africa, and you're saying that Africa has a brain flight, I disagree with you, right? The intellect of Africans isn't limited to the institutions of white people, right? The problem that's going on in Africa is that you got a concerted effort, and you got the actual necessary steps and policies to bring about that concerted effort's goal in Africa, to deprive people of the opportunity, the wealth to participate in a capitalist income in a capitalist economy correctly, because that's the nature of capitalism. Capitalism is colonialism, right? What have to happen in Africa is that black people in Africa have to begin to dictate their whole situation, their whole context, their whole reality on their own terms, point blank, period. And when they start doing that, it changes the ability of somebody to be corrupted from outside forces. You understand? It changes the ability of somebody to be co-opted by outside forces. Same thing with Yvette and all of them. You would be able to see her acting stupid from 3 miles away. She wouldn't be able to bring up no catchphrase to make you feel fancy about what she talking about. You basically see she trying to put you back underneath some white boy nuts. End the story. You know what I'm saying? So that's all.
But good brother, I just want to ask you, because I found that the way you started your interaction really interesting. So you should have like by nature love for black people and mistrust of white people. But I don't know if we just like take the conversation we just had, we can see that some black people are not to be trusted and are harmful. And I don't know. Like sometimes when you say that, I'm like, well, I'll ask you the question: are you saying that by nature, white people are inherently evil? And
I'm saying that the overwhelming evidence in history points to them not being trusted by black people, dog. And you can't deny that. Just if you statistically look at our history, it literally tells you, do not fuck with them people over there.
Right.
It says that to you, bro. I'm not saying nothing about them. I'm saying the reality of our existence. Everything that you talked about, you was like, Africa got a brain drain. They need engineers in this. They got people in Africa right now that's trying to do crazy shit. They got boys making engines that run on water. They got dudes building cars out of bicycles. Right. And the reason that situation is like that is because France is taxing like 3-7 countries every year just to exist, even though they were supposed to be liberated. Who supports that shit? You got sanctions all over the world, and none of those sanctions actually go by any international legal law. Them shits is literally killing people. Them shits is illegal. They're war crimes. The sanctions that the US, NATO, all that shit got, they war crimes, bro. How does that exist? That's collusion between a specific group of people who have the military power and they got the political history behind it, and they own our resources because of that political and military. They gun pointed us, bro, on everything.
And you know what I think it is too, yo? I think is that the thing is that, yeah, we gotta have a healthy hate for them for sure. But when we do get some support from them, we gotta stay black. You know what I'm saying? We can't switch the script. So I understand that, because, hey, you gotta have a healthy disdain for black people too, because, hey, I already experienced that even in Atlanta. Do the black down in church, I try to get some, so whatever. So, you know, I don't think we can throw them away just because, hey, they work together and they don't trust each other. You know what I mean? So even though we, you know what I'm saying, we got to have a healthy disdain for black people too, we got to still work together. Because, I mean, all of us ain't, you know, we can't romanticize the situation.
Well, I would say,
I'm saying that when you see black people operating in a certain situation, right? I apologize for keep talking, bro, but because I'm trying to say something, and I just want to make sure that what I'm trying to say is clear, right? So, like I'm saying, we say that we can't trust Yvette Carnell. You can't trust Papa Doc. You couldn't trust Obama. All of those people got something in common. They operating on somebody else's agenda. And that person that they operating on the agenda, that person been acting against us outright for the longest time. Right. And then because of that period of time, right? 500 years, that's a long time, bro. You get forced into a situation where you got to start operating based on what they do. Right. You know what I'm saying? You look at how we educate ourselves, how we identify success, how we identify education, intellect. It's based on them. When you took and then the thing is that people belittle other people when people say, yo, but Africa had intelligence before. African intelligence was more advanced, right? Let me not say more advanced, but it was very advanced. We were very cosmopolitan. We were global people, right? So that when you look at that and you take that as a fact, then you have the ability to make a comparison, and you can say to yourself, yo, you know what? For real though, I got the innate ability to be really, really smart without these dudes measuring my shit. I don't even got to use them as a yardstick. You get what I'm saying? And that's what I'm saying is that's the relationship, brother. That's what I'm saying. That's the relationship. When you say I can't trust a person, you can't trust that person because they working against you, because they working against themselves.
But I think your definition of the historical facts is overly simplistic. And if you look at who has been coming to plunder and basically take over Africans, and you'll find that, you know, white people are not the only ones that came and did that. That's first of all. Second of all, like throughout this whole history of conquest, you'll always find African people that were traders. So, like at one point, I feel like it'd be more reasonable to be like, well, we should find people that are like-minded, that have the same goals, and that want to see the same results. And I don't know if it should necessarily be race-based.
Facts.
I'm not sure about that question yet. But one thing for sure. Like if you come from the outset, we can trust black people and we have to mistrust white people. What about, I mean, what about an Arab, right?
I mean, it still have to be a black thing though, for sure.
Yeah. See, here's the thing. Don't listen to what they say, watch what they do. You have to study history and you have to learn the lessons of history. There's no group outside of African people that has ever had our best interests at heart. Nobody. We understand there's always going to be traitors. Every movement, everybody has their traitors. That's just granted.
Yeah, but our traitors end up derailing our movements.
Yeah, I understand. Okay. So that's,
I'm sure white people have traitors too, but I guess they found better ways, more efficient ways to set them aside and to make them non-harmful to their objectives.
Yeah, that is understood. That's baked into the game, the presence of traitors. But you have to, don't listen to what they say, watch what they do. I have had meetings with black elected officials. I've had closed door meetings with black elected officials who talk one way to black people, and then they sit in these meetings with these white boys plotting against black people. We understand that happens, but we have to know how to discern. Just like the brother said, it takes a distrust of white folks, and that's based on the track record. The track record is already there. What
about Arabs?
That's not even okay. So
yes, Arabs too.
To me, you've got two branches. You've got two branches of white supremacy. You have the European branch and the Arab branch of white supremacy. All right. So when I say white people, I mean white people. All right. But look at the history of Arabs. Look at how they treat black folk in our own communities. So I'm just saying, you can find you don't see white folk walking around with African names, right? Wearing dashikis, do you? You don't see Arabs walking around with African names, but you see Africans walking around with white names. You see Africans walking around with Arab names. So what's the difference? These are just two different branches of white supremacy. That's the thing we got to understand. So forget that. So yeah, you have to have an unconditional love.
Well, how come they're warring each other? How come?
Wait a minute, hold on. Let me just finish.
It doesn't make sense. I'm sorry, bro.
Wait,
but
you say how come what?
How come Arabs and whites are warring each other? I mean, they devastated the Arab world.
It doesn't mean they like each other. Irish and Italians war each other. All these white, listen, the history of Europe before they left Europe, these white tribes were slaughtering each other all over Europe. Just because they're the same doesn't mean they like they don't like each other. Irish don't trust
Irish in England.
Irish, Anglo-Germanic, you got all these white tribes here in America. They don't like or trust each other, but they have the ability to put their differences aside to step on our throats.
Exactly.
That's the difference.
They got us. They got us.
So you must have an unconditional love of black people, because that's the only thing that's going to sustain you when the Negroes pull their knives out and come at you. You have to understand it's just those Negroes right there, and then have a way to deal with them. The dysfunction, all that other stuff, you have to understand it's there for a reason. You got to understand that. And then a healthy distrust and absolute distrust of white folks. Now, white folks, see, I'm a degree professional. So I spent much of my life in white society, in different settings, inner city, small town, white elite institutions and so forth. So I see how white folks don't trust white folks, because if they did, they wouldn't have this thing called contracts. Court systems are clogged up all over the country with white people suing white people. And you see this current mess right now with this, with this upper government. So white on white tribal warfare, you got World War I was what? White on white violence 1. World War II was what? White on white violence 2. So they don't trust each other. Why should we?
Oh, wait.
History. Just study
I'm
history.
sorry.
Why should we?
Real Black Media. Are you saying, so if I take what you're saying and I reverse it, you're trying to say, okay, well, the white man is like this and the black man trusts each other unconditionally, or before they came into contact with the white man, they trusted each other unconditionally. They were all peace and love. And sometimes I'll get straight to my point. It feels like sometimes we're constructing a fable on how we used to be, and it's almost like, okay, well, we used to be angels and these devils came, and sometimes it's a little bit too simplistic, man.
No, he's not saying that. I didn't hear that. I didn't hear that.
Here's the thing.
I didn't get that.
Bro, here's what you overlooking. You overlooking this part of it, right?
You overlooking the history, homie.
Those. He's saying that. The example he gave, it shows you clearly, and what you got to try to do is you got to try to step back, like for a couple seconds, and let what he's saying to you come to you, and then take it, right? So what he told you was they used to fight each other, but when it comes to us, there ain't no fighting, and we need to be the same way. We might not have been that way before, and maybe that contributed to getting us like where we at right now. But we got to get past that. We have to be the same way towards them. We got to have a distrust of them more than we have a distrust of each other. We have to have an appreciation of each other so that we can work with each other past the problems that we got. We got to fix our problems internally and get past them. You get what I'm saying?
That's the bottom line.
Can I ask you one question? I feel like I'll give you an example of a problem that cannot be solved, or maybe you guys have a solution. I don't have the solution. If you look at a lot of a big part of the community have subscribed to like the Kemet ideology, and they're coming back to like, these roots of Kemet, and I think so there's some positive, some negative, and there's a big part of the community that's Muslim, right? If you open the Quran, you'll see that the big part of the book is blaming Pharaoh and calling out Pharaoh and calling out basically the society that was Kemet as inherently evil. How do you reconcile those? Those are two huge groups within the community. How do you
just point out to somebody who's Islamic, you point out to them that other Islams in the Arab community still call them Abid when they go to Mecca, still call them Abid when they in the temple or in the masjid. So they gotta sit down and they have to have they gotta reconcile how they're gonna be called a slave to their face in the place of God when they are a son of God among other sons of God, and the word of Muhammad say that that's not supposed to be what's happening. How is that still occurring? And why is it occurring? It's obvious that their skin is black, and the other individuals who are doing this, and see, this is the thing about this is the thing about us as a people. At some point, we got to come to terms with the facts. Anti-blackness, anti-Africanness is the reality that we face globally. We got it, and that's why what is being stated on this meeting or whatever is important, right? You got to know, you got to look at these people for what they do to you because of who you are and what you are. Right. You could choose a religion any day of the week. I could choose to believe I'm from Mars. I could become a Native American tomorrow, a Moor tomorrow, a sovereign white person tomorrow in my mind. But when somebody approaches me and they approach me because of what I physically am, it's going to be the same thing that they do to you. It's going to be the same thing that they do to an Islamic person. It's going to be the same thing they do to a black Buddhist or a black Hindu. It don't matter. You know what I'm saying? That's what we're talking about. I have a question for the guy.
What was your problem? What was your problem with the Black Americans trying to get back closer to Africa? What was your problem with that?
Before you continue, hold on. I want to real quick ask everybody this question because I have on the screen a history of the wars of the world. And as you can see, if I toggle this a little bit, or does it really? So basically, if you look at the chart on the right, it basically shows from 2500 to 500. That's the lighter color, and then it gets darker until it gets to 1946 and 2016. These are the recorded wars of human history. Do you notice anything in particular about this map? And I'm going to let everybody respond. Starting with, I haven't heard from we haven't heard from E-Bizzle. So E-Bizzle, like, what do you notice about this map, and what do you think about this map overall?
I mean, when you look at the map, you can look at majority of your wars is going to be in that what they call the Middle Eastern area or that African area. The wars are in yellow and red, right?
No, all of the dots are wars, but the lighter colors are just earlier wars in history.
Oh, okay. I mean, it's a big contingent of wars throughout that Middle Eastern African area and down south throughout the United States.
Well, I see modern wars like today in Africa, but I mean, from this map, Europe has the highest density of wars historically of any population.
Clearly.
Wait. Kamji, how?
Yeah.
If the wars between African kingdoms weren't recorded, like if they had no system to record them, how can you say that you have like an accurate picture?
They were recorded.
Everybody had tribal warfare, man.
Yeah, we have different ways of recording things through oral testimonies, through some symbolography, where basically you record things like through memory boards. So there's different, counting strings and ticks. There's different ways to record it. It just so happens that when we look at
were they taken into account within this this graph, right?
What's your thing against Africa, yo?
I feel like this is a history of Westerners going to war. It's not.
No. Look at the lighter colors. The lighter colors would be before the conceptualization of the West, especially if you look at that 2500 BCE to 500 BCE. Like, I think that's Meroe. If you look at Africa, let me see if I can zoom in a little bit. Just let me do that. Okay, there we go.
So I'll tell you. Look, go back up. Don't zoom out. Can you go a little bit back up towards, the weird thing that I find is that, when I look at China, China was, from what I've read, was known to be a warring state, a constant warring state. And they don't have that many dots.
They do. They have quite a bit. Like, if you look at that light color, look at all this light. They've had wars. It's just that.
Can you show your source? Can you show you another source that says that?
Well, this is the article. Hold on.
No. I was talking to the other gentleman. Because this clearly shows right here what it is. But if you got another source that says what you said about China, do you have that?
I mean, to me, this just shows that, if you look at the earliest period, they did have a lot of wars. But comparatively speaking, when you go to Europe, I mean, it's just, it's night and day. Every single period that we have, Europe has all of these wars. So
they have a major war in every century.
Yeah. Literally.
I mean, what I would ask you, Cam, can you bring up the most recent, I think the last 100 years of the recent coups that's been in Africa? Because what I'm hearing on a lot of different aspects is a good conversation is like, once again, I had mentioned earlier, like a utopia, and I just don't see that. I know the brother had brought up like a lot of people are pushing Kemet today, and like it was just this land that it was nothing going wrong or nothing, and I find that hard to believe. I mean, when you look at history, even recent history from Idi Amin, Charles Taylor, some of these other, rogue leaders throughout Africa, I mean, they was rotten to the core. I don't care what color they was. You feel me?
Idi Amin
and Charles Taylor were both either MI6 or CIA trained and influenced, bro.
See, that's the thing.
You can take your pick throughout Mali, Burkina Faso, Chad. You can take your pick today. Whoever they was, whether they was backed or not, we can go and find different evidence. They may have been backed by certain groups and this and that, but they still had a right. Okay, when is it the time to say no? This is wrong, or this is right? We always don't use that as like an argument, or they was backed by somebody.
Now it shows the red dots are right there, man. It shows that they did have water. Red dots are right there.
Yeah, like
that we have. I mean, right there.
Southeast Asia and Africa, the vast majority of their warfare is between 1914 to 2016. So that's literally the modern anti-colonial period where they have the vast majority of these wars.
Right. So looking at it. It's just that we did less, even though on the contrary, you might, of course, we're not trying to romanticize the situation. That's not this conversation. You're just simply showing the graph.
I mean, to me, it speaks for itself. To me, it honestly speaks for itself. But man, I think Real Black Media left. I wanted to get his take on it. But Zank Tank, what do you got? What do you think about this?
I just think it just shows, the truth. A lot of the wars are in Europe, even, I know Africa is pretty big and China is pretty big compared to like the space of Europe, but it looked like even more of the modern wars were even in Europe. It looked like more of the modern wars is even still concentrated in Europe. Compared to its size, it is, pretty small. But yeah, it just...
again, when I look at the graph and I look at South America and North America, right, it seems like most of the wars were between 1914 and upwards, right?
Well, I think I see the Americas. You have 1500 to 1914.
So it's hard to distinguish the yellow. Those two yellows. So are you saying that those yellows are 1500?
Yeah, the 15. This the orange right here, like the lightest orange, that's 1500 to 1914, and that's what I see. The vast majority of the wars in the Americas were literally like the European colonial settlers.
Right.
So that wasn't the Indians in America? I thought that was the Indians.
So you're saying, so this is basically what it's saying. It's saying that, okay, but before the Europeans stepped in, those American native tribes didn't war each other. The Incas didn't go and raid and pillage other villages around them.
Let me see if I can find if they have any light colors.
Yeah, but not to the extent of...
They have them, but it's not like... It's because you have some colors that are like 200 to 1500, which would be the Incas, but literally it's not as much as the colonial period. It's just nowhere close.
It's really hard for me to distinguish. Like, I feel like all of those are oranges.
Well, let me see. Do you see, like, these are light colored oranges. And then let me see if I can get a darker orange. Literally a darker orange right there. So this would be 1500 to 1914. And then this would be a 200 to 1500. So like it looks that there's a lot of wars in the Americas and South America from that 200 to 1500. But like if you look at it like from a grand scale, it's like the majority of them are that 1500 to 1914. The vast majority in the and then you have some. You have Reds and stuff here. Like that's probably the Falklands War, in the early 1900s. And you do got different colors, but I mean we know the history of colonialism and why these countries speak Spanish, so we don't even really have to guess about that. But I kind of just wanted to show that because real black media made that point. But honestly, I'm gonna get ready to shut off, so we're gonna go round robin, and y'all can give your last takes on the presentation and what you think about the topic in general. Start with E-Bizzle.
I thought it was a good topic. You brought out a lot of good information. I have to look into some more of it. But everybody made good points. I'm one that likes the study of history, and I think you got to definitely, take each individual circumstance. How can I say it? I mean, we can't be subjective and get into it like a narrative of like a victim mentality. Like when something happens, it's because of this person or this and that. I've met just as many, rotten black people as I met rotten Chinese people and white people as well. So, I mean, I'm kind of past that. I don't really walk with that victim mentality, but I do understand, through colonialism and different things throughout the world. So that's it.
All right. Thanks for coming on, and I appreciate all of the input that you gave, and you're free to come on the panel anytime you want. So let's go with Zank Tank next.
Appreciate you, brother Camryverse, for inviting us on, inviting me on. Appreciate everybody that was on, and it was a good panel. Hope to be on next time.
Absolutely, I appreciate it. Appreciate all the love. So let's go with Mr. Rich. What you got?
Yo, man, appreciate it. You know, when I first heard you, I was definitely impressed, especially when you was talking about the, when we get into that, the Fallon and the proto, you was going against Unc. I like that conversation.
Oh, yeah.
But this was very interesting. I love that. I got to get more into that because I want to, I'm on your side about proving that, the other side. But anyway, this conversation was definitely good, and, they can't be serious about reparations if they didn't include in Cobra. That's just silly. That's just pretty silly. I was there in Atlanta when Cobra was doing their thing, but yeah, man, keep up the good work, man. You're definitely doing your thing, and keep, talking that shit, yo.
I appreciate it. Thanks for the love. All right, Kimbra, your last up. Are you there?
Yeah. You saved the best one for the last. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, well, okay, so I'll end up with a general statement. Maybe it's not really about the conversation, but it is in a more profound way. I would just say that, for next time what my stance is, and you can kind of gauge me more, and gauge my arguments a little bit better. I feel like we're moving into an era where the lines of confrontations have changed, and I think the elites are using these different divides: black against white, women against men. All these new theories that are coming out to divide us amongst the people. But if we look at the real divide, it's going to be the elite against the proletariat, or elite against the people, right? And as long as if we don't find a way to try to address this problem first, I think we're going to step into an era where we're going to live into some totalitarian government that are going to dominate us and oppress us in new kinds of ways we've never thought about. Well, we can think about when we read Brave New World or something like that, George Orwell's novel. But I think that's where what our society is leading to worldwide. And I think we should find a way to we don't really have time to settle all the differences. We have to ally and try to find a way to fight them. There you go.
Absolutely. Thanks. I 100% agree with that. And thanks for coming on. So thank you all for showing up to this. This has been a great conversation. I really, really appreciate it. We kind of went over just the American origins of these Black relationship conversations. And we spoke about, the rise of just Pearly things and how she was able to capitalize on these Americocentric dialogues that have been occurring within this space. We kind of went through a lot in terms of the ideological commonalities between the two, how they both kind of traffic in a lot of these right-wing talking points. And essentially the fact that in most cases, it's really class, kind of what Kimra was discussing, that makes the main division between Black people from around the world. And our experiences govern the way that we navigate through reality. So for this, I would just call for people to be as intelligent, as intellectual as possible. Don't necessarily fall into, these echo chambers. Be insightful and, give the most intelligent analysis that you can for the situation that you have at hand. And with that, I appreciate y'all for joining in, and I will catch you all on the next one. Peace.